You have often believed that love could redeem anything, that if you loved deeply enough, you could melt even the coldest heart. Yet what you met instead was a mirror that reflected only your own light back at you. The narcissist does not truly see you. He sees only the reflection of himself in your empathy. This encounter, though tormenting, is not meaningless. It is one of the oldest dramas in the human psyche, the meeting of the false self with the soul that remembers wholeness. When I speak of narcissism, I do not speak merely of vanity or self-absorption. I speak of a primordial wound. Narcissism is the refusal of the soul to descend into its own depths. It is the terror of vulnerability disguised as grandeur. The narcissist builds a fortress of reflections, a hall of mirrors in which every light must serve his own image. Yet there comes a moment when that illusion begins to tremble, and it is often the empath, the one who feels rather than merely sees, who becomes the mirror that no longer flatters but reveals. The empath, in Jungian language, carries the archetype of the healer, but also the shadow of the wounded child. The empath's sensitivity is not a mere trait. It is an initiation into the mystery of the collective unconscious. You have been trained by pain to read the unspoken, to hear the tone beneath the words. When you meet the narcissist, two great forces collide: the mask that cannot feel and the soul that cannot stop feeling. To the empath, the narcissist first appears as a puzzle wrapped in tragedy. You sense the fracture behind the arrogance. You believe you can love him back into wholeness. But what you do not yet see is that he lives in terror of the very intimacy you offer, for to be seen truly is death to the false self. The narcissist's entire psychic structure depends on being admired, idealized, or feared, but never known. The moment you see through the mask, the myth of control begins to collapse. In the symbolic language of the psyche, the narcissist represents the ego that has lost communion with the self, the ego in its proper function is a mediator. It gives structure and consciousness to our being. But when the ego separates itself from the depth, when it crowns itself as God, it becomes a tyrant ruling over an inner wasteland. This is why narcissists must feed on admiration. They have severed their roots from the wellspring of true vitality. Their life force must be borrowed from others, siphoned from the gaze of the empath, who still remembers the sacred source. It is no accident that you attract such souls. The empath's unconscious mission is to heal the rejected parts of the world, to offer love where there is absence, but love, when not anchored in self-knowledge, becomes a sacrifice at the altar of someone else's emptiness. The empath believes he is giving compassion. In truth, he is attempting to rescue the part of himself that once felt unseen. The narcissist, sensing this hunger, offers the illusion of recognition, but only to reclaim it as power. In dreams, such encounters often appear as a banquet where one figure feasts and the other fades, or as a vampire who cannot enter without invitation. The symbolism is ancient. The vampire cannot live without the living blood of another. In the same way, the narcissist feeds on psychic energy, admiration, in attention, emotional intensity, anything that confirms the existence of his grand illusion. Yet the empath, too, is drawn by archetypal magnetism. You are not simply victims of circumstance. You are participants in an alchemical ritual orchestrated by the unconscious for the purpose of awakening. You may ask, why would my soul attract such darkness? Because the empath's journey is the path of illumination through shadow. To feel deeply is to walk constantly at the edge of the abyss. Every encounter with a narcissist is an invitation to reclaim the fragments of yourself that were lost to dependency, guilt, or the fear of rejection. The narcissist's fear is exposure, the empath's fear is abandonment. Together, they mirror each other's unfinished work. When the empath finally truly sees the narcissist without illusion, a sacred threshold is crossed. The final mask shatters. For the narcissist, this moment is unbearable. To be seen by an awakened empath is to face annihilation, not physical, but psychological. His entire architecture of deceit depends on invisibility within charm. Once you pierce it, you render his spell powerless. But let us look deeper. The empath who sees through the narcissist also sees through the collective persona of humanity itself. We all wear masks. The difference is that the narcissist identifies with his mask completely, while the empath has always felt the tension between appearance and essence. The empath's pain arises because he senses truth but cannot yet live it fully. Thus, when you confront the narcissist, you are really confronting the lie of the world, the masquerade of egos that fear love, because love dissolves the boundaries they worship. This confrontation is both external and internal. In the alchemy of individuation, every external figure represents an inner force. The narcissist in your life personifies the false self within you, the part that performs goodness to be loved, that hides anger behind compassion, that fears being disliked. To defeat the outer narcissist, you must first unmask the inner one. Only then does empathy transform from bondage to wisdom. The process is painful because it requires a death, the death of naivety, of idealism, of the illusion that love alone can redeem what refuses to awaken. The empath must learn that true compassion does not rescue, it reveals. To love consciously is to see both the light and the shadow in another without losing yourself to either. The narcissist's fear is exposure. Your fear is separation. But in seeing through his final mask, you discover that exposure is freedom and separation is illusion. Imagine the psyche as a vast theater. The narcissist is the actor who refuses to leave the stage. The empath is the audience who weeps for the character, believing it real. Individuation is the moment the lights come on, and you realize you were both actor and observer. What collapses then is not love, but illusion. The true self rises like a phoenix from the ashes of projection. You see, the empath's greatest power is perception. It is the intuitive gaze that penetrates veils. This gaze is ancient. it belongs to the archetype of the seer. Yet perception without boundaries becomes martyrdom. The challenge is not to stop feeling, but to feel with consciousness. When your compassion is rooted in awareness, it no longer feeds the vampire. It exposes him. You do not fight darkness by closing your heart, but by illuminating it. The narcissist cannot stand this light. It burns the facade. His charisma fades. His control dissolves. What was once enchanting becomes hollow. He may rage, accuse, or vanish. But beneath that reaction lies terror. Terror of the soul he abandoned. The empath's presence, when awakened, is not weakness, but mirror. You become the silent witness before whom falsehood cannot perform. At this stage, many empaths experience grief not only for the loss of the person, but for the shattering of their ideal. Yet this grief is sacred. It marks the end of projection and the beginning of integration. The heart that once sought to heal another now turns inward, discovering that its own wholeness was the medicine all along. In Jungian alchemy, this is called the nigredo, the blackening. It is the stage of dissolution where all certainties disintegrate. You may feel lost, emptied, even numb. But this void is not punishment. It is purification. The fire that burns away illusion also forges gold. When you no longer seek validation from the narcissist or from the world, you enter the realm of authentic being. What then becomes of the narcissist? Without your light, he must face the silence of his own emptiness. Some will seek new mirrors. Others may begin their descent into the shadow they long denied. Whether they awaken or not is not your burden. Your task was never to save them, but to see. To see clearly is to awaken from the collective dream. The world is full of narcissistic structures, institutions, leaders, even religions that depend on the blindness of empaths. They feed on devotion without discernment. But when enough empaths awaken, the power dynamics of consciousness begin to shift. The age of illusion gives way to the age of transparency. The empath who sees through is not merely a person, but a prototype of the evolving human soul. When the final mask falls, silence enters. It is not the silence of peace, but the silence of revelation, the kind that comes after the shattering of illusions. You stand there, surrounded by fragments of what you thought was love, and you realize that you were never speaking to a person, but to an archetype wearing flesh. The narcissist was the embodiment of the ancient myth of the false king, the ruler who wears a golden crown forged from the suffering of others. He governs a realm of appearances, feeding on adoration, because without it, he dissolves into the void. He secretly fears, and you, the empath, were the healer who entered his kingdom, believing that light could cure blindness. You walked into the labyrinths of mirrors, not realizing that you were the reflection he long sought to possess. Every smile, every compliment, every gesture of affection was a ritual of enchantment, an invocation meant to bind you in the dance of projection and validation. You were to him both priest and sacrifice. the giver of energy and the witness of his grandeur. But you were also the danger, for your gift, the capacity to see, was the very sword that could pierce the illusion he called self. You must understand, the narcissist's world is constructed on denial. He has banished his shadow so completely that he must project it onto others to survive. The shame he refuses to feel, the weakness he cannot acknowledge, the fear he dares not name. These become the burdens of his victims. You begin to carry emotions that are not your own, sensing guilt where there should be none, doubt where there should be certainty. This is psychic contagion, the dark art of unconscious possession. In the ancient world, they would have called it witchcraft, for indeed it operates through the invisible threads of energy that bind souls in unspoken compacts. But it is not magic, it is psychology. The narcissist's greatest weapon is your unhealed empathy. He finds in you the part of himself he cannot tolerate the feeling, vulnerable, intuitive self, and then punishes you for embodying it. He seduces you into believing that love is earned through sacrifice, and when you finally break, he calls your sensitivity weakness, your devotion obsession, your intuition madness. He projects his own denied insanity into your mind until you no longer know where he ends, and you begin, this is not love, it is possession, masquerading as connection. And yet, paradoxically, it is a holy encounter, for through this darkness, you are being initiated into the mysteries of the self. The narcissist's cruelty becomes the crucible through which your soul discovers discernment. His rejection forces you to find within yourself the love you once begged for. His manipulation trains your intuition into mastery. What he meant for your destruction becomes your awakening. But first, there is anger, a deep, righteous anger that rises like thunder from the depths of the unconscious. You will want to destroy him, expose him, demand justice from the universe. Do not fear this fire, it is sacred. For too long, the empath has been taught to equate spirituality with passivity, forgiveness with amnesia. But in the alchemy of individuation, every emotion is a messenger of transformation. Anger, when purified of vengeance, becomes clarity. It burns away the residue of illusion and leaves only the essence of truth. In dreams, you may see the narcissist as a trickster, a shadowy jester wearing your face. This is no coincidence. The trickster archetype exists in all of us. It is the aspect of the psyche that deceives to protect, that lies to preserve a fragile identity. The narcissist lives entirely within this archetype, trapped in the performance of his own myth. But the empath, upon awakening, reclaims the trickster as an ally. You learn to see through deception without becoming cynical, to discern motive without losing compassion. You will begin to sense how society itself rewards narcissism. The world admires masks more than authenticity. Success is measured by image, not integrity. Even spirituality has become theater gurus who preach humility while worshipping their reflection. This collective narcissism is why the empath's awakening is so threatening. To see through illusion is to withdraw consent from the dream that sustains the false gods of this age. You become a living anomaly, an unprogrammable soul in a world addicted to validation. When you withdraw your light, the narcissist feels it like death. You were his mirror, his oxygen, his proof of existence. Without your reflection, he must face the void within. He may attempt to hoover you back with words of repentance, gifts, or nostalgia. But understand, this is not love, it is hunger. He does not return because he misses you. He returns because he misses the way you made him feel powerful. The moment you see this, the spell is broken. In this moment, something ancient awakens in you, the archetype of the wise one, the one who sees but no longer saves. You begin to observe without absorbing, to love without losing yourself. You realize that empathy, when bound by boundaries, become vision. You no longer pity the narcissist. You understand him. You see his grandiosity for what it is, a child's cry for recognition, amplified by adult power. You do not hate him, because you have seen his shadow and recognized your own reflection within it. For the truth is uncomfortable. The narcissist and the empath are twins born of the same psychic wound. Both are children who were unseen. The difference is that one chose to inflate the ego while the other dissolved it. The narcissist became addicted to admiration to escape shame. The empath became addicted to understanding to escape guilt. Both lost themselves in the eyes of others. Healing begins when the empath stops rescuing and the narcissist stops performing. Though the latter seldom reaches that point willingly, you may wonder why. He fears you so deeply. It is not your love that terrifies him. It is your perception. Love can be manipulated, but perception cannot. When you see through him, you deprive him of the illusion that sustains his existence. You become the mirror that reflects not beauty but truth. And truth to the narcissist is annihilation. For beneath his masks lies the unbearable emptiness he has spent a lifetime denying. You are the reminder that he has no self, only an echo of admiration. And yet, your task is not to destroy him, but to transcend him, to recognize that his fear of being seen mirrors your own. For as much as you wish to expose his falsehood, part of you fears the same exposure, the revelation of your own hidden motives, your own dependency on being the healer. The narcissist's mask crumbles when you remove yours. This is the final alchemy. Two illusions dissolving into truth. From this dissolution, compassion arises. Not the sentimental kind that forgives too quickly, but the fierce compassion born of insight. You no longer seek to change anyone, for you have seen how all change begins within. You no longer chase approval, for you have tasted the freedom of self-recognition. You become sovereign over your energy, a guardian of your own sacred space. And when you love again, it will not be from need, but from overflow. At this stage, many feel a strange loneliness, as if awakening has exiled them from the human play. But this solitude is not isolation, it is integration. You are not withdrawing from the world, you are returning to it without illusion. The empath who has seen through the narcissist becomes a teacher, a healer of clarity. You walk among the masked, not as their enemy, but as their mirror, radiating the silent light of truth that needs no validation. In mythic terms, this is the descent into and return from the underworld. You have faced Hades and survived. You have eaten the fruit of awareness and cannot go back to innocence. But now, as you ascend, you carry a new gift. Discernment. You can see the soul behind the smile, the wound behind the performance. You are no longer deceived by grandeur or undone by cruelty. You have become whole, and wholeness, my friend, is terrifying to the false self. The narcissist fears your wholeness because it exposes the fragments of his own. When he looks at you now, he sees not the adoring empath, but the reflection of everything he lost. Your peace becomes his punishment, your silence his mirror. He cannot stand it. For in your stillness he encounters the one thing he has always fled himself. But you must not gloat. That would only rebind you to the same illusion. The true victory is not in his downfall, but in your transcendence. The moment you no longer need him to validate your pain, you are free. The dance ends not with revenge, but with understanding. You see now that he was never your enemy, only your shadow teacher. He came to show you the places within yourself that still sought permission to exist. The empath's light, once naive, becomes now a sacred fire, discerning, steady, untouchable. You realize that compassion without awareness is servitude, and awareness without compassion is cruelty. The balance of the two is mastery. You no longer open your energy to every cry for help. You listen instead for truth, for not every cry is genuine, and not every wound wishes to heal. You have learned that love without wisdom breeds bondage, and so the final mask falls not from his face, but from yours. You see that the world itself wears this mask, the mask of endless validation, of success without soul, of influence without intimacy. You no longer participate, you become the witness who sees through the theater of personas. This is what it means to awaken, to stand in truth, even when surrounded by illusion. After the fire, there is a quiet that feels almost foreign. It is the hush of your inner landscape, no longer echoing with another's demands. You may mistake it for emptiness, but it is not emptiness, it is spaciousness. You are beginning to inhabit your own soul. For the first time, your empathy no longer extends outward in compulsive offering. It circles back, forming a sacred orbit around your being. You begin to see that the healing you sought to give was always meant for you. This is the stage where the empath integrates the shadow. It is a solemn and luminous work, for what has been projected must now be reclaimed. The narcissist has served as your dark initiator, forcing you to confront the disowned fragments of your psyche. The pain you felt under his manipulation mirrors the very pain you inflicted upon yourself each time you betrayed your intuition to be accepted. You realize now that your gift of sensitivity was never the problem. Your denial of its boundaries was. To integrate the shadow is to descend into the underworld of your own motives. You must ask, why did I need to be the savior? Why did I believe that love meant enduring pain? Why did I call surrender faith when it was really fear? These questions are not accusations, they are doorways. Each one opens to an unhealed wound, a buried archetype seeking redemption. Often, what we call empathy is the survival instinct of the inner child. You learned to read emotions as a way to stay safe, to anticipate danger, to earn affection. Sensitivity became armor, disguised as compassion. But now, as consciousness expands, you can see how this adaptation, though once necessary, has become your prison. To continue overfeeling is to remain enslaved to the world's emotional currents. To awaken is to realize that your empathy is meant to serve your soul, not consume it. In Jungian symbolism, the shadow is not evil, it is unlived life. Within the empath shadow lies rage, power, autonomy, and the right to say no. These are the qualities the narcissist despised in you because they threatened his control. But they are also the qualities you secretly feared within yourself, for they contradict the image of the good empath you clung to. Integration begins when you invite these banished forces back to the table. You sit with your anger, not to act it out, but to listen to its wisdom. You embrace your power, not to dominate, but to stand firm in truth. You discover that real compassion includes the self. Without it, love becomes self-erasure. You see now that pity is not compassion. It is disguised superiority. The empath who pities the narcissist still operates from illusion, still needs to feel important by healing what does not wish to be healed. True compassion requires equality, the recognition that both light and darkness belong to the same divine fabric. When you can look at the narcissist and no longer feel compelled to save or destroy him, only to understand, then you have transcended the polarity. In this space of understanding, forgiveness arises naturally not as moral duty, but as liberation. Forgiveness is not forgetting what happened. It is releasing the psychic tie that binds you to the drama. It is the realization that no one truly escapes their own unconscious. The narcissist is enslaved by the same wound he inflicts. His arrogance is his armor against shame. His manipulation, his desperate attempt to maintain coherence. To see this is not to excuse him, but to comprehend the tragic architecture of his psyche. The empath awakening, however, must not end in philosophical detachment. Awareness must become embodiment. You must bring your insight into the realm of action. This means setting boundaries, not as walls of bitterness, but as temples of sacred energy. Every time you say no without guilt, you realign with the order of the self. Every time you withdraw your energy from what does not honor you, you affirm your divine sovereignty. The world will resist this, Those accustomed to your boundless giving will call you selfish. The narcissist will accuse you of cruelty. Society will label your discernment as coldness. But understand this, they are speaking from the perspective of the mask. They cannot yet comprehend that love grounded in truth feels like loss to those who live by illusion. Stand firm. The empath's task is not to please the world, but to awaken it. And awakening always begins with discomfort. As you integrate your shadow, you will notice an alchemical reversal. The energy that once leaked through empathy now returns as intuition. You no longer absorb emotions. You perceive them, you sense the motives behind words, the hidden tension in a smile, the subtle vibration of deceit. But this perception no longer overwhelms you because you are anchored in your own center. You become like a clear mirror, reflecting everything, absorbing nothing. This is the empath's ascension, the transformation from emotional sponge to conscious seer. At this stage, dreams take on a different texture. No longer nightmares of pursuit or abandonment, but symbolic initiations. You may dream of retrieving lost objects from water, of finding hidden rooms in your childhood home, of walking through doors that open into light. These are messages from the unconscious announcing integration. The psyche, once fragmented by projection, is reassembling into unity. And then, perhaps without warning, you will encounter another narcissist or something that resembles him. But this time, your reaction will be different. You will not feel that magnetic pull, that intoxicating sense of destiny. You will feel a stillness, a neutrality that surprises you. What once seduced you now appears obvious, almost theatrical. The performance no longer entrances you because you have transcended the need for it. This is how you know you are free. The narcissist, remember, fears the empath who sees through him not because of moral judgment, but because such seeing dissolves the illusion of power. But what he truly fears, though he would never admit it, is that same gaze turned inward. He fears his own soul. In your journey, you have done what he refuses to do. Descend into your darkness and emerge whole. You have met the God within yourself, and nothing terrifies the false self more than divine authenticity. And now you begin to sense that this entire encounter was never about two people, but about the evolution of consciousness itself. The narcissist represents the old paradigm, the egoic human, fragmented, addicted to image, terrified of inner truth. The empath represents the emerging paradigm, the awakened soul, feeling, seeing, integrating, refusing to live by illusion. When these two meet, a cosmic tension unfolds. The narcissist tries to devour the empath's light, but the empath, through suffering, learns to transmute darkness into awareness. Out of this conflict, a new level of consciousness is born. You are part of this evolutionary movement. Your suffering was not meaningless, it was initiation. Humanity as a whole is confronting its narcissistic shadow. the denial of the soul, the worship of appearance, the addiction to validation. The empath's awakening within you mirrors the collective awakening of the species. Every time one human being chooses truth over illusion, empathy over control, self-awareness over projection, the final mask of humanity weakens. Do not underestimate the power of this inner work. It ripples through the collective field. The healed empath radiates a frequency that exposes deception, not through confrontation, but through resonance. Falsehoods collapse. In the presence of authentic energy, you become a living antidote to the sickness of the age, a being who neither worships nor despises power, but channels it through consciousness. There will come a moment when you look back and realize that the narcissist gave you the greatest gift, yourself. For had he not mirrored your blindness, you might never have sought your sight. Had he not drained your energy, you might never have discovered your inner source. Had he not betrayed you, you might never have learned the sacred art of self-trust. Thus, even the wound becomes sacred, for it carried the seed of your awakening. And now, as you stand upon this threshold of rebirth, you feel an ancient knowing rising within. Love, when purified of illusion, is not a feeling. It is a force. It does not cling. It liberates. It does not rescue. It reveals. It does not feed on admiration. It feeds on truth. This is the love the narcissist could never embody. But that you were born to remember. You are no longer the empath who sees only suffering. You are the awakened soul who sees purpose in every shadow. You no longer walk into mirrors hoping to be seen. You walk as the mirror itself. The final mask has fallen, not from another's face, but from your own. And what remains is not pain, not fear, not need only consciousness, vast and luminous, watching the play of the world with quiet compassion. When the soul has endured the crucible of awakening, something profound begins to happen. The empath becomes luminous from within. It is not a glow born of pride or superiority, but the radiance of one who has faced the abyss and returned with understanding. This is the stage where you no longer seek validation through seeing others. You see through them. You have become vision itself. What once felt like a curse, the burden of feeling everything now becomes your sacred instrument of discernment. The awakened empath moves differently through the world. You no longer react to the chaos of others. You witness it. You are no longer seduced by charisma or dramatics, for your eyes pierce through to the archetypal essence behind every mask. You see not the persona that pleads for recognition, but the wounded God behind it, the fragment of divinity that forgot its source. When you look at a narcissist now, there is no anger, no pity, no fascination. There is only comprehension. The kind that knows every mask is a symptom of separation from the self. In the language of archetypes, you have now crossed from the healer to the sage. The healer suffers to understand. The sage understands to free. You no longer need to prove your worth by mending others. You recognize that each soul must walk its own labyrinth of mirrors. You can offer insight, but you no longer mistake guidance for rescue. Compassion becomes less about alleviating pain and more about awakening consciousness. For pain that is truly seen transforms. The narcissist cannot comprehend this energy. To him, connection is always a transaction, a stage on which roles must be played, but you no longer play, you simply are. The power that terrified him most was not your empathy, but your authenticity. Authenticity annihilates illusion because it refuses to participate in it. That is why he feared your gaze. To be truly seen is to die to the persona, and few are ready for that death. Yet your journey is not merely psychological, it is spiritual. For what you have encountered in this dynamic is the drama of the soul's return to unity. The narcissist represents the fallen aspect of consciousness, the part of the divine that became enamored with its own reflection and mistook it for reality. You, the empath, represent the remembering aspect, the one who feels the pain of that separation so deeply that it becomes the path back to wholeness. Your confrontation is the reenactment of a cosmic myth, the reunion of the fragmented self with the light of awareness. But do not think that enlightenment means detachment from humanity. The awakened empath does not retreat into isolation. You are called to walk among people, to embody this new awareness in ordinary moments, in how you speak, how you listen, how you hold silence. Your very presence becomes transformative. You need not preach or persuade. The light of consciousness communicates without words. You will notice how the world begins to mirror you differently. Where once you attracted wounded egos, now you draw souls seeking truth. The old magnetic pull of chaos fades, replaced by synchronicity. Conversation deepen. Encounters become meaningful. You will begin to meet those who have also walked through their own underworlds, fellow initiates of pain who now serve as mirrors of strength rather than lack. This is the soul tribe, not bound by blood or belief, but by resonance, and yet you must remain vigilant, for the shadow is never banished. It is integrated. The narcissist outside may vanish, but the archetype remains within. It will test you through subtle forms, pride in your awakening, superiority in your detachment, spiritual vanity disguised as wisdom. You may begin to believe that you have transcended the ordinary, that you are above the illusions of others. Beware, that is the ego returning through the back door, wearing a halo instead of a mask. The true measure of awakening is humility. The awakened empath knows that light and shadow are eternal dance partners, that each contains the seed of the other. You do not escape the duality. You learn to balance within it. You no longer seek to destroy the darkness. You learn to hold it, to understand it, to let it teach you what light alone cannot. This is the wisdom the narcissist could never grasp, that wholeness is not purity, but integration. Integration does not mean passivity. It means alignment. It means that your choices arise from awareness rather than reaction. You set boundaries without anger. You forgive without naivety. You speak truth without aggression. You understand that love and power are not opposites. They are two expressions of the same divine current. The narcissist used power without love, and you once used love without power. Now, within you, they unite, and this union is what the mystics have always called the sacred marriage, the inner alchemy that births sovereignty. Sometimes, in meditation or dream, you may feel the presence of those who once wounded you. They appear softer, almost childlike, stripped of their defenses. This is not illusion. It is your psyche reconciling with their archetype. You have withdrawn projection, and so their energy returns to its original form, a wounded part of the collective human soul. You feel compassion, not attachment. You bless them, not with sentimentality, but with understanding, for you know that until they too face their own mirror, they will remain prisoners of their performance. You may also notice how your empathy evolves. It becomes quieter, wiser, less emotional. It is not the empathy of rescue, but of awareness. You can sit beside someone in pain without absorbing it. Listen to manipulation without reacting. Witness cruelty without losing faith in goodness. This is mastery not of others, but of your own energy. You have learned that the true empath is not one who feels for others, but one who feels with creation while remaining rooted in selfhood, and this selfhood, your individuated self, is the greatest revelation of all. The self is not the ego's inflated image, nor the martyr's empty vessel. It is the divine center around which all opposites revolve. It is the axis mundi, the still point that connects heaven and earth within you. When you live from this center, you become untouchable, not because you are armored, but because you are transparent. Energy passes through you without distortion. Truth flows effortlessly. You become, as I have often said, a channel through which the universe contemplates itself. It is here that the empath fulfills their highest purpose, to serve as consciousness made flesh. You were not sent to heal every broken soul, but to remember wholeness in a world that has forgotten. You were not meant to save others from their darkness, but to walk as proof that darkness can be transformed. Your story of survival becomes a myth of renewal. You no longer tell it with pain, but with awe, as one who has seen the machinery of the soul and emerged reverent. This, perhaps, is the final irony. The narcissist who sought control becomes the instrument of your liberation. His manipulation pushed you toward truth. His deceit sharpened your discernment. His rejection forced you into self-love. Every wound was an initiation disguised as betrayal. You realize now that the universe speaks through contrast, that what the ego calls enemy, the soul calls teacher. And so when you ask, why did they fear me? Understand this. They did not fear your light because it was bright. They feared it because it was true. And truth, when embodied, dissolves everything unreal. The narcissist's empire of illusion could not coexist with your awakening, your seeing unveiled not only him, but the falsity of the collective persona that sustains him. You were the crack through which the greater light entered his constructed world, and that light terrified him, for it whispered of the death he refused to face, the death of the mask. But you do not need to watch that death. Your journey continues beyond it. You are no longer defined by opposition, no longer bound by roles of empath and narcissist, victim and oppressor. These were only stages in the grand theater of individuation. You have stepped off the stage and entered the real, the realm where souls meet without masks, where love needs no performance, where being itself is enough, and yet there is one last truth. The empath who has seen through the narcissist must eventually see through themselves, through the identity of the awakened one, through even the story of transformation. For the soul's final act is surrender, not achievement. The truest seeing is not, I see through you, but I see through me. Beyond all masks, beyond all mirrors, there remains only consciousness, infinite, unbound, endlessly observing itself in every face, every story, every reflection. And in that stillness, there is peace. The drama ends, the soul rests, the empath becomes what they always were, awareness witnessing itself. The final mask falls not with a sound, but with a breath, and behind it there is no narcissist, no empath, no wound, no mirror, only the eternal gaze of being, seeing through everything, fearing nothing, loving all,